Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis Gianoutsos. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Who's your favorite leader? Now, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
I think that I asked this question in advance, which I appreciate. I like this. I like that. Just Nelson Mandela. I went back and forth. There's several great leaders. I think for me, not just because he was in prison for so long, but just I feel like he could always hold like these two truths at one time. Somehow, okay, so systemic injustice and apartheid with reconciliation. So he'd fight the systemic injustice of apartheid at the same time preach this message of unity and reconciliation. When one feels like you're fighting a system, the other one seems like you're fighting for cohesiveness. And he could do that. And he was a leader as a philanthropist, but he was also a leader on the political side of things. And those sometimes seem like different things. So I don't know, just super impressed with, I love how he just carried himself as a human being as well. I just love the cut of his jib, which is an American sailing term. I love how he presented himself, but just the weight of the things that he was involved with. It feels like you would crack under the burden of that, yet he didn't. He stood up in that thing and remained true, as far as I know, to those beliefs. And it's just so inspirational.
Yep, totally. I think he's a great guy, great inspiration, and that inspiration continues, even though that he's now passed. Yeah. Steve, if you had the chance to sit on a park bench with Nelson Mandela, have a coffee together, what would be one question you might ask him?
Oh, man. The first thing that pops in my mind is, how do you do it? How do you carry the weight of what you know and what you've seen and what you believe when it feels like you're fighting the long defeat, which is a phrase that I don't remember who initially said, I think Howard Thurman. But how do you withstand that? Because I know when I've been to Rwanda 4 times and I've been broken every time. Like I feel like I'm just broken. And it gives me excitement to carry on the vision, to get people excited, to rally the troops, to raise money, to raise awareness, but it just breaks me. And I'd like to know, and maybe he was broken, I don't know, but how do you go to prison for all those years and then come out and still cling to your message? How do you carry that much weight of the world and still get up in the morning?
A nice question. Well done. So the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does that mean to you?
I think it means exactly what it is. I love the title. It is changing. And I think the people that think leadership is a single skill set that you learned 30 years ago and you cling to that are getting left behind as leaders. And so it's changing because of so many reasons. It's changing because the world just changes. The technology is changing. The perspectives of the generations are changing. We're much more global in nature. So all of these things require new levels of leadership and not even new levels, just a different approach to leadership. We need to start thinking about leadership differently, or we're going to be left in the dust. We're not going to have anybody to lead. We're not going to have anything to lead if we keep trying to lead the way that we did 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah, I can just imagine the leader looking around going, hello, anyone there? Yeah.
Hey, where is everybody? I'm a leader.
Yeah.
A leader requires followers.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely they do. Yeah. I think John Maxwell is an author, speaker, and a guy I've followed for 30 years. And he says, if you're out there and you turn around as a leader and no one's following you, all you're doing is taking a hike. That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And
I love that. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really important what you've just said there about making sure that you're staying and moving forward as a leader for sure. And how would leaders do that? How would they make sure that they're staying ahead of things? What do you reckon is 1 or 2 things they might need to do?
I think they need to be current with the trends that are happening. I think always be a learner. I think you just have to be a learner. And what I mean by that is not always skill set, is being aware of what are those trends. It's plugging into people that are futurists or looking at the future of work, or people in the industry that are changing things, where are the leaders emerging? I think that's one thing. Just paying attention. Okay, this person all of a sudden, boom, they just came on the scene and they're this really effective leader and everybody's following them. What are they doing? How are they thinking? How are they communicating? Who are they resonating with? So I think just being aware of what's going on and then just being willing to engage with your followers to find out what they need, what they want, and not assume I asked them 10 years ago what they wanted and they'll let me know if anything changes, right? Like I told my wife I loved her 20 years ago and I'll let her know if it changes. So like you need to be engaged. It has to be an interactive experience with your followers. I think the idea of just saying, I'm a leader, I don't need to engage with my followers. Oh, they're just my people. I think those days are gone they used to work, right? Because there used to be a society where people were desperate to have jobs and they just wanted to be told what to do. So that worked for them. And the leader just wanted the power and I wanted to tell people what to do. And so it worked. Those days are gone. Now I think staying engaged with your followers, with your clients, with your stakeholders, and just even asking those questions, having opportunities for them to say, here's what's on my mind. Here's what's important to me. I think just communication is huge.
In the introduction, I talked about you helping leaders become happier. Do you think leaders today are happy?
It's tough. It's split. It's split. Most of the leaders that I've talked to are not happy. This has been part of my research. They're not always unhappy, but they're very few are actually happy. There's a difference, right? There's a spectrum between, there's the unhappy sort of people, and those are people that are pretty obvious. Then there's the happy people that are on the other side, and there's a few of them. But then the rest of us are just in the middle, biding our time. And we think, I'm going to be happy when? I'm going to be happy when I retire. I'm going to be happy when the kids are out of the house. I'm going to be happy when I get this promotion. We're always looking for when. We always say we have this hope, right? I have this hope that I'm going to be happier. And what I tell people all the time is that hope is powerful, right? Hope is a great thing to have. There's people in Ukraine are hoping for this, and I'm hoping for this, but hope is not a strategy. If you're sitting there going, man, I hope I get happier, I hope you do too. But that's not going to get you any closer to happiness than actually taking action. And so I think my experiences as leaders, a lot of them are not happy, and they range from being middle of the road to very unhappy.
Yeah. And I think the two words hope and try should not be the vocab of a leader, because we're not trying, we're not hoping. We may be giving others hope by our leadership and by us leading. That's the thing that's really important. Steve, I think there's the word happy as you're talking about, but what about the word satisfied? So I might be happy, but I may not be satisfied in what I'm doing. How does that play out?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I think of happiness in terms of how much is our world, how much of our leadership, how much of our business is aligned with who we really are. That's the core of our happiness there. But I think, being happy and not satisfied is okay as a leader. I think that's fine. If you're running a business, you could be really happy, but you might not be satisfied with the results. And I think that's okay as long as the motivation for increasing your results is aligned with who you are. If let's say I just want to have a good living, be well respected in my community, make a difference. And I'm doing all of those things. But if I'm not satisfied because of some personal motivation, that's fine. But if it's some outside influence that is now making me unsatisfied, like if somebody says, you know what you should do? You should expand your business. You should do more. You should make more money. And if I fall into the trap of listening to that, and now my discontentment is because somebody thinks I should have more, or my neighbor has more, or some definition of good leaders has more, and now I'm discontent, I think that's not an internal discontentment. That's something that's externally motivated. And I think we need to question that a little bit, because what happens is we start chasing that, and then we become unhappy. So I think it's okay to be happy and not settled, wanting more, but I think really challenge, what is the motivation of that? Is that really an internal thing, or is it driven by something external? And if it's external, I think there's a risk of that potentially manifesting itself in unhappiness in the future because you're chasing some vision that's not even your own.
Here's a question for you, and it's the person can be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Steve Jobs, hands down. Now, I love history. Absolutely love history. I love reading about ancient history, especially. And so one of my favorites from the old days was Alexander the Great. Absolutely great, phenomenal stories. Now, he's a military commander, but this young man took over the reins of power from his father, Philip, as a 19-year-old boy. Now, he had been raised since he was 14 to occupy positions of power. But during the course of the next 12 years, he took these Macedonian and Greek troops all the way to the frontiers of India, And he died pretty young at the age of 32. But his legacy still stands today, to the point where Greek medicine is still practiced in India as an ancient. And so all the way through Afghanistan, all these kinds of things. How did he do that? Now, a modern day equivalent to that might be And what I'm saying is starting with just a pile of resources and then you make something great out of it would be Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs revolutionized not one, not two, not three, 7 different industries. He revolutionized 7 different industries. If he revolutionized one, he would be a great businessman. If he's revolutionized 2, he would be maybe a tycoon of some kind. To revolutionize 7 different industries is the mark of a genius. And I consider both those examples, because Jobs had a very success at a very young age as well. He wasn't given the keys to the Macedonian kingdom, Alexander the Great was, but he was able to create these multi-billion-dollar fortunes for Apple. And Apple's a $2 trillion company now because of the foundations that Jobs set. How did he do that? You can only do that with powerful leadership skills.
And maybe maybe you've already given me the answer to my next question, is that if you were to meet him on a park bench and have a coffee with him, what would be one question you would ask him?
This might be surprising, but I would want to know his spiritual practice, because Jobs had a very powerful spiritual practice. And he made a spiritual pilgrimage at a young age again to India. And that profoundly affected him. One of his favorite books was Autobiography of a Yogi. And he would hand that out to his friends and such. And that is a big part of what I've learned in the past 20 years, definitely in the last 10, is that your spiritual practice is as much a part of you being a leader as anything else, And if you don't have some kind of a spiritual practice, and I'm not talking about going to church and worshiping according to the dictates of the Catholic Church or whatever it is, if that's what you want to do, please go ahead and do it. But I'm talking about something as simple as being calm, okay, and being centered and allowing things to flow forward and being aware of yin and yang and knowing which is right for the moment. And so what I have very deliberately done in the past 5 years, 10 years, has been to take time in the mornings for at least a 30-minute to 50-minute meditation. And I might do that multiple times during the course of the day, just to zone in. Okay, and you can zone out or you can zone in. Is you're not zoning into the business or the problems or the opportunity. You're zoning into yourself. And so he had Jobs had a powerful spiritual practice. And one of his best lines that I've read is that a reporter had asked him that he had basically missed the internet. Apparently he missed the internet, all the different revolutions that were happening in the internet. And I forget exactly which products bypassed him at that point in time. And the reporter asked, "What are you going to do now?" Because the reporter was framing it from the point of loss. You've lost out here. And Jobs simply said, "I'm going to wait for the next big thing." Because he knew there was going to be a next big thing. Because there's always a next big thing and always another opportunity to not only gain, but also to redeem yourself. And so that's part of that spiritual practice as well. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and that's the only reason you have the iPad, iPod, iPhone, and on it goes, right? That came all about after this reporter asked him that question. So how do you maintain that equanimity in your mind space to allow things to come together instead of you forcing things into place?
Yeah, I like it. I love it. Let it come together. Yeah. And we need to be calm. We need to be centered to allow that to happen. And I think also that a leader who is calm is a leader who's in control. And I don't mean that to be a control freak. There's somebody who knows where they're going, actually has real strong foundation, values, ethics, things like that. And that's a really good thing. So I'm actually glad I asked that question. So then you could share that. So it's really cool. Now, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. That's the title of the show. When I say that title or statement, what does that mean for you?
Leadership is changing. I think it reflects this idea of what people want out of their leaders. I put out a quote of the week every week on my LinkedIn account. And one of the quotes is simply that strong leadership emanates from strong storytelling and narrative, to the point where the narrative actually defines the leader. A great leader with a poor story becomes a poor leader. But even a mediocre leader with a great story has the opportunity to become a great leader. So when you say to me that leadership is changing, it is about understanding the narrative that is relevant to the times today. And so you would never have heard of, like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you would not have seen to the same level the impact of things like Black Lives Matter and this whole idea of inclusivity, representation, as it relates to how a leader imbues his organization, their organization, with these values, because people are very cognizant of wanting to see these values. You have BlackRock, the world's biggest money manager, insisting that their investee companies have very high ESG ratings, right? Environmental, social, and I think governance, right? ESG ratings. And so they're saying sustainability has to be a part of your mandate. It can't be just about making money. So we have so things are changing. And when things are changing out there, which mandates that leaders have to change to mirror what their people, their constituents, what the world at large wants out of their organizations. And this is clear recognition that you are a part of the whole. You are not there to exploit the whole. You are there as a part of the whole. So what is your contribution?
Daniel, who's your favorite leader now? This person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
For me, it would be the current Sheikh and ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed. And the reason why I really like his leadership style is because he does have a big vision and it is mind-blowing. And if you've been to Dubai or you've seen a documentary on Dubai, it blows your mind. It's actually very hard to comprehend the level of success that they've created there. So in 2007, I was invited to Dubai to become the first professional athlete to go and train and coach wakeboarding. So I went over there. I had the ability to go on television, radio, all the media. So I was treated like a rock star. And I had the ability to coach locals. And I remember there was one local guy. He came down and he said, look, I want my daughter and son to learn how to wakeboard. But he looked at the boat they had and he said, that's not good enough. So the local sheikh, the small sheikh, went and bought a brand new boat worth about $120,000 just for his kids to ride on for about 3 days. But the scale is mind-blowing because where we were riding, the waterway was a man-made waterway. It was a 6-kilometre dogleg from the Arabian Gulf into the desert. And it was a man-made waterway and it cost them $6 billion to make it. $6 billion. And the original reason why it was built was for the sheikh, the head sheikh, to bring his yacht down and park his yacht in there. So a $6 billion waterway. And that was given to us to wakeboard on. So we're wakeboarding in the middle of the desert, and literally there is no difference between the sand dunes and the beach on the sand. It's just sand everywhere. And you've got this $6 billion waterway to play on. And so when I went there in 2007, that place was literally in the middle of nowhere. It was 100 kilometers from Abu Dhabi, 100 kilometers from Dubai. But then if you go back now, everything is built up between the airport into exactly where I was working. And it's huge. They don't build towers, they build skyscrapers. They don't build a plane building, they build a building that is mind-blowing. You know, that Burj Khalifa, you can be 100 kilometers out in the desert and you can see the tip of that thing. And it is huge and everything is immaculate. They don't have a little budget. They have a huge budget. And they say, we don't want to be average. We want to be the best. And everything there that he's creating is the best. It's like an oasis in the middle of the desert. And it's growing. And there's no limitation to what they perceive as possible. So what we think is possible in the West, they laugh at that. And they say, over here in the Middle East, we're going to times that by 10. And they really blow your mind. And it's just constantly changing. It's exciting. It's dynamic. They're thought leaders, they're visionaries, and they're risk takers.
Absolutely. You can see it. And I watched a documentary the other day actually on Netflix about it and what they were doing. And it was like, wow. And I think there's 3 or 4 episodes into the series, I think it is. I haven't watched the others yet. I'm looking forward to it. But I think you're so right in what he's saying. But it's a big vision that he has. Have you actually met him personally?
I walked past him once. And I was in Emirates Towers and I was walking along and I saw the sheikh walking to me, and this has happened twice in my life. I've missed these opportunities twice. He was walking straight towards me and he didn't have anybody else around him. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the sheikh, but you can shock. And people would actually stop and talk to him and say hello. And he'd stop and talk to them. And I was too busy caught up in my mind going, oh my gosh, that's the sheikh. And I kept walking. A time that had happened to me before, I was actually in London Heathrow, and a mate of mine was flying from Sydney to London, and I met him at the airport, and he called me and he said, I'm about to come through the airport. And so I said, good, I'm waiting at the gate for you. After about 60 minutes, my mate didn't show up, but this other guy walked through the gates, and he walked and he stopped about a meter in front of me, and he looked at me and he looked me up and down, and he looked at me up and down, he looked at me up and down, and he was waiting for me to say something to him. And I'm looking at this guy going, gee, you look familiar. Gee, you look familiar. And then he must have realized that I wasn't the person that he was looking for. And so he smiled and walked away. And as he got about 3 meters away, I said to myself, oh my gosh, that was Neo. I couldn't even say the word Keanu Reeves, but there he is in front of me. I just saw Neo from the Matrix. And then my mate rings me and he says, where are you? And I said, I'm waiting here at the airport. And he says, mate, he goes, I'm not going to be there for another 18 hours. I meant I was just stepping into Sydney Airport.
Oh,
so yes, I've seen the Sheikh. Yes, I've seen Neo, but I missed my opportunity both times.
if you were to sit on a bench in the park with the Sheikh and you were having a coffee with him, would there be one question you would ask him?
Yeah, I'd ask him, what's not going to change about Dubai?
Nice question.
What's not going to change?
Yeah.
And I think the response would be is we are not going to stop breaking the boundaries. We will continue breaking the boundaries. We won't settle for second best. We have to be the biggest. We have to be the best. And also, I think what he'd say is, I won't settle on my people. Because as a visionary, he wants a world-class city for his people. So his vision is bigger than him. And it's also going to leave an impact on generations to come. And his father was the same. He's the same. And the things that his son is doing is exactly the same. So I think it would be what's not going to change about Dubai.
Yeah, nice question. Well done. Hey, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that, the title of the show or that statement, what does that mean to you?
For me, leadership is changing means that we're moving into a digital world and these borders are opening up. However, because of things like COVID, our ability to travel is restricted. But I think through COVID, we've realized we don't have to be face to lead anymore. And I think people are looking at leadership very differently. And I think leadership is going to be very digital, meaning that people are going to follow us. And leadership is your ability to get followers. However, these followers we're probably never going to meet personally in our life. I think they're going to follow us online. I think they're going to read our books. I think they're going to come to our seminars. I think they're going to come to our coaching sessions. I think they're going to come to our team meetings. But we'll probably never meet these people in the flesh in the future. And especially with businesses like we run today, it's impossible to be omnipresent. This is the closest thing that we'll ever get. And that's what's going to change, in my opinion.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I see a lot where a lot of people are moving to in the coaching space, training space and all that. They're doing that, but also people working in businesses, and a lot of them don't know how to lead virtually, which is interesting. But I had a guy I actually interviewed on one of the episodes, and he talked about, how do you lead someone that you've never met? And there's a lot of that right now whereby people have actually employed people the last 2 years, but they've never met them face to face. It's always been in a virtual, digital kind of sense. And I wonder if they don't like them once they meet them face to face, maybe. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see.
I think we have to meet people very fast today. And even if we just go back and have a think about selling has changed over the years. Many years ago, back in the 80s, you could go and knock on somebody's door. Hello, my name's Daniel. What do you do here? And you could sit down and have a 2-hour conversation. If you went and knocked on a door today, they would say, what the hell are you doing here? And if you ask them, what exactly do you do here? They would kick you out. Because with technology and the way the digital world is today, is you should be able to research at least 80 to 90% of these people or these companies online. You should be able to find out more information about these people than they know about themselves. And when you get into a sales conversation today, the sales conversation needs to take place within 20 minutes because people have this need for speed. Humans live by the expediency factor. Things have to move fast. And so you've got to be able to present in a very short amount of time. Now, I want to bring that back into understanding people. We don't have 3 or 4 or 5 hours to hang out on Zoom every day just to get to know one another. So we've got to figure out a way that we get to know this person intimately without them having to be on the call. And I think I've figured that out. What we use today is we use science and technology to understand people's behaviors. And we're moving away from what's called the golden rule, which is to treat others the way that you would like to be treated. And we're moving into what's called the platinum rule, which is to treat others how they want to be treated. but we've got to utilize science to discover exactly how to do that. So that's where I think it's going to have a big change. The platinum rule.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.